Naomi and Antonio met for the first time at a mutual friend's anniversary celebration. Naomi attended the party as a companion of one of the birthday boy's friends. At the time, she had only been dating her companion for a short time and had not given much thought to the connection. He seemed unreliable to her, and she did not want to start a serious relationship with him. During the party, Antonio asked Naomi to dance, and a connection was born between them. After the party, they started chatting on social media, sharing details about their favorite music and daily activities. When Antonio found out that Naomi had broken up with her boyfriend, he made his intentions known, and the couple quickly decided to bond in marriage. For the wedding, Antonio's mother, for unknown reasons, gave them a glass table. Naomi didn't like the table right away, but neither she nor Antonio saw fit to throw the gift away, and it ended up in a far corner. It was often cluttered with objects, which made Naomi wonder why such an unusual gift had been chosen. Antonio playfully brushed off her concerns, joking that she should be grateful that it wasn't something even weirder. He understood that his mother had unique tastes, so a glass table was a rather modest gift compared to what she might have chosen. Antonio worked a shift job as a sought-after survey engineer and earned a generous salary. Even when he was away, he did not forget to pamper his beloved wife, regularly sending her money transfers and surprising her with gifts, bouquets of flowers, or her favorite food. Antonio did not know that betrayal was brewing and that his absence would have dire consequences. He didn't know that his wife was having an affair with one of his coworkers, a new employee who was shamelessly pursuing her with clear signs of affection. Naomi, starved for love and attention, eventually gave in to his advances. She found herself shamelessly lying to her husband while looking him in the eye. Despite feeling guilty, Naomi justified her actions, claiming it had only happened a few times and promising it wouldn't happen again. Upon returning from an ill-fated business trip during which his wife had an affair, Antonio was surprised to find their previously cluttered dining room table, now Naomi and Antonio's desk, lying in disarray on the floor. He assumed that Naomi must have started the cleanup but hadn't finished before he returned. He considered calling her to inquire or offer his help, but decided to wait until she got home from work. After a long drive, Antonio's favorite way to relax was to take a bath. Despite his initial protests, Naomi had convinced him to follow all the rules, to use fragrant foam and salt. So when he arrived home today, Antonio decided that he could not deviate from this tradition and began to fill the bathtub. Meanwhile, he went to the kitchen to make himself a large mug of tea, anticipating the moment of relaxation in the hot water. However, as he opened the trash can to throw away the tea bag packaging, he suddenly froze. At first, Antonio thought he was imagining things, or that it was some kind of optical illusion. He quickly grabbed the nearest fork from the table and dropped it into the trash can. His heart began to pound rapidly and then seemed to sink somewhere inside. He was thrown into a sweat. It wasn't just his imagination, but it wasn't an optical illusion either. In the trash can, which Naomi had apparently forgotten to empty before leaving for work, lay a torn foil packet and a contraceptive. Due to the intense noise in his head, Antonio couldn't think clearly. He stood, slowly opening and closing his eyes, trying to comprehend the situation. The realization seemed to be slipping away from him. However, the sound of water pouring from the bathtub brought him out of his stupor. He hastily wiped away the effects of the flood, still unsure of how to deal with the burden. Antonio grabbed a pack of cigarettes from the shelf and headed for the balcony. In the hallway, where the couple had turned their backs contemptuously on the glass table, the midday sunlight poured down on him. The curtains, swaying slightly in the breeze, partially dimmed the light, creating a play of shadows on the table. Antonio noticed the dusty surface of the table, decorated with fingerprints that had been there for months. As he moved closer, he could clearly make out the marks of a man's palms and two semicircles. A disturbing mixture of anger and frustration overwhelmed him, and Antonio grabbed a nearby stool and unleashed his fury on the table. The sound of shattering glass filled the room, leaking behind a broken tabletop and a tossed metal base. Filled with righteous rage, Antonio began haphazardly hurling objects at the walls. Both a cherished wedding photo frame, a TV remote, and Naomi's favorite vase were caught in the crossfire. After a moment, Antonio regained his composure and calmly lit a cigarette. Meanwhile, Naomi returned home, completely oblivious to the chaos that awaited her. She had completely forgotten that the remnants of her misadventures had never been cleaned up. In her mind, Antonio's return meant that they could order a meal, open a bottle of wine, and enjoy a nice evening together. What she didn't know was that fate had other plans. As soon as Naomi opened the apartment door, she was greeted by a mess of scattered belongings. Fear gripped her. She thought they had been the victims of a robbery. Without even taking off her shoes, she hurriedly checked every room for signs of intrusion. It was in the kitchen that she found Antonio sitting alone at an empty table with only a half-empty bottle of whiskey and a glass of ice. He was obviously drowning his sorrows and was already heavily intoxicated. Stunned by this scene, Naomi couldn't help but exclaim, "What happened?" Her husband looked at her with a puzzled expression on his face. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Surprise?" he asked hesitantly. "You had a surprise for me, didn't you?" The husband felt a wave of worry wash over him. "I completely forgot to take out the trash this morning." "I'll explain," she began. But before she could continue, Antonio slammed his fist on the table, causing the glass to clink against the bottle. "What's there to explain? I waited for you. I saw the whole thing." Naomi instinctively recoiled, fearing he might hit her, but despite his drunken state, Antonio managed to keep his composure. In the days that followed, Naomi begged her husband for forgiveness. She cried incessantly, repeatedly confessing that it was a mistake that will never happen again. In the end, Antonio gave up. Deep down, he still loved her and found the strength to forgive her. Despite the difficulties they faced, the couple stayed together for almost 5 more years, and they even had a daughter. They worked out their problems, and it took time for Antonio to regain trust in his wife. But despite their best efforts, the crack that appeared on that fateful day grew wider and wider over time, and eventually led to a breakup. On his 37th birthday, Antonio made the agonizing decision to end their marriage. Naomi accepted his choice, realizing deep down that it was always a possibility, and that their mistake had severely damaged their relationship. After the divorce, neither of them were able to find new partners. Naomi and her daughter decided to move in with her mother to start their lives with a clean slate. Meanwhile, Antonio made the bold decision to start a new chapter of his life in a neighboring town. Antonio knew that his ex-wife had tried twice to meet a new partner, but each time her mother intervened, causing their relationship to end. Naomi's mother was strongly opposed to the fact that her granddaughter was raised by a stranger, and gently discouraged her daughter from romantic relationships. As a result, Naomi felt unhappy and lonely for many years. Despite all the circumstances, her daughter remained her only source of joy.